What is up, everybody? Welcome to another deck tech. This one is the blue-white Approach the Second Sun deck. Now, interesting thing is going on here, right? So we have this card, Approach to the Second Sun. And this card basically states that when you cast it for the first time, you put it 7 cards deep in your deck, and you gain 7 life. When you cast it for the second time, you win the game. So a lot of decks came out originally just playing one of this card, thinking I'm going to cast it again. But this deck does something interesting. You're able to win on the second turn after you cast it, right? You cast it, and then you cast it again because you have a second copy. So that's something very interesting this deck does. Now, how are we getting to turn 7 and 8? Well, first of all, we have 25 lands, and we have 4, 7, 11 cyclers to make sure that we miss no land drops whatsoever. But we also have 4 Fumigates, the full 4 Blessed Alliance to gain life and kill creatures, 3 Aether Meltdowns, a cute little Gideon here as like a hedge against control, but also pretty good against some of the mid-range decks, the 4 Supreme Wills, the 4 Glimmer of Geniuses also as a way to draw cards, and I mean, that's basically the deck. What I like about this is its simplicity, it's straightforward, it's easy. Now, what is it good against? Well, it's pretty good against the mid-range meta, that is for sure, right? If you're playing a teamer deck or you're playing a green-black deck, you're pretty much just going to fold to all these Fumigates, all these cast-outs, all these Blessed Alliances, and you are going to be done in by Approach of the Second Sun. Now, why might it not be great in this meta? Well, Zombies is a pretty tough matchup, Mono Red's a pretty tough matchup, Ramp can be tricky, and the control mirror is not easy either. Like, yes, you have a Sphinx and you have 4 counters in the board, but if you're playing against a dedicated control deck with a few extra counters main, you really only have 4 counters in the main deck, right? So you're basically giving up game 1 against a lot of the other control decks. Now, those might only make up 10% of the meta or whatever, but you are giving up that game 1. And so that makes this less likely for that people like want to play it, right? That being said, you do have a ton of good matchups, right? The most popular deck in the format right now, Teamer, is a pretty good matchup for you. But Teamer can still get by. You can, you know, I mean, I don't know if that matchup's entirely 60-40. It might even be like 55-45, but Teamer definitely has a good shot. So I don't think this deck blows anything out of the water, but I do think this deck has pretty good matchups across the board. Now, why are we not playing cards like Torrential Gearhulk? Because we're playing Fumigates. Torrential Gearhulks are great because not only do they get you value, right? What's the value they get you? Well, they are not only a creature, but also a spell. In a deck that's not using creatures to win the game or block, really, creatures just aren't of any value. So you might as well just have the extra spell, right? That's the reason for no Gearhulks. Now, I've seen a lot of people with like spell Quellers in the side. I decided with the Linvala Regal Caracal plan. Regal Caracal obviously comes in against control, and I mean basically against every deck, right? It's great because it is lifelink. It's great because it makes a bunch of extra threats. Authority of Councils come in against Mono Red. Obviously all the counters come in against control. Descend Upon the Sinful is a card I find myself bringing in often. I might even just start with 1 in the deck. I like the Gideon of Trials. I also like a 5-mana Jace. Both of those are great Planeswalkers that you can add to the deck. Now, what value are we getting by having a bunch of Planeswalkers here? Well, our opponent is focused on countering our Second Sun. So when we have Planeswalkers on the table, right, we're immediately forcing them to not only answer those Planeswalkers or they lose the game, right? So all of a sudden they have to answer those Planeswalkers and they have to worry about Approach. So we're just diversifying our threats a little bit, putting things on the table that get a sustained card advantage if we're able to shut down the creature game plan, which this deck is able to do quite effectively. So that's the reason for Planeswalkers. I would definitely consider playing a few more. Much love, everybody. Good luck this weekend at your FNMs, your GPs, whatever it is. We're going to move on to the next deck.